Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you my team that I used to take down the final boss, which is the Eternal Dragon on this iteration of the Doom Tower. I will go over some of the strategies and the thought process when you're heading into fighting this boss, and then I'll show you the full breakdown of the Masteries and the entire build concept of the team that I am using to beat it in about 4.5 minutes. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so first of all, when it comes to defeating the final boss, don't feel bad if it takes you 15, 20, 30 minutes. Whatever, it's fine. It's just about getting it done and getting the rewards for finishing the Doom Tower. That is what it is all about. So don't feel bad if you can't speed farm it. It's totally fine to farm a different boss if you're able to do that faster. It's just about getting the boss finished. And let's do a quick refresher course on what we're gonna need to be taking into account when we're going into this boss. Okay, so one of the first things we'll notice on the kit here for Irigoth, who is the Eternal Dragon, is lots of AoE. This is why Duchess is so amazing. Obviously, Duchess is amazing in lots of content, but Duchess has a passive that is going to reduce damage taken by your entire team by AoE attacks. So it's going to make healing a lot more impactful because you are taking less damage. So if you've got Duchess with somebody like Verask, you're gonna, all of the healing that he does, it's going to be easier for him to keep up with keeping the team alive. Still with the Drakes, things like that, because your team will be taking less damage. So lots of AoE coming out from this boss, and most notably, lots of block active skills and increasing cooldown of your abilities. So you either have to go like super high resistance to kind of mitigate that and be able to resist those effects that are coming onto you, or you just want to use champions that have lots of value tied in to their default A1 abilities or their passive abilities. But also, some people forget that this boss is not immune to having its cooldowns increase. So you can use something like Basher, Warlord, and go ahead and get the effects of increasing the boss's cooldown. Not only can it do it to you, but you can also do it to the dragon in return. As you can see right here, I have got a Warlord with an ability right here that will attack all enemies with a chance to put all of the target's skills on cooldown. So we can go ahead and use this on the dragon right here, and boom, you see the increased cooldown going off. And now look at the dragon's abilities. We have got these nice cooldowns on it right there. So that can be super impactful and something to keep in mind if you've got a champion on your roster that is capable of doing that to the boss. So this ended up being the team that I went with. Duchess for the speed aura and obviously the support. The reduction of the damage with her passive is super amazing. And then if anything goes awry, she's able to pick my team up and go ahead and revive me so that I can keep on going. The other four are pretty realistic champions to get. So obviously if you don't have a Duchess, you want to replace her with somebody who's going to bring some sort of toughness to your team, some sort of ability to revive, some sort of support to help you stay alive is what you would want to replace her with. If somebody has a speed aura or some sort of speed boosting for your team, that would be great as well. Then I'm using two epics with Padma because she has an amazingly consistent attack down on an AoE effect as long as she's critting with her A1, and she also has a decreased accuracy, which is super good in this boss as well if you're going to be going for the more resistant heavy route to try to resist the effects of the blocking your active skills and increasing the cooldowns of all of your stuff. Then Verask and Syl are mostly just there to help me sustain. They're just there to crank out heals, make sure I'm keeping my Drexthar alive, and then Drexthar is there as my damage dealer, mostly because of the HP burns that he brings. And what's cool about this is we can build all of them to be tanky. We don't have to build any of them with attack. We don't have to build anything. It's not like a Trundo where we're going for nukes, where we got to get a ton of crit damage, a ton of attack, and try to nuke things down. We can build all of these champions to be very sturdy and be able to kind of take what's being thrown at them from the boss, and then we get a lot of passive out of our default abilities. So if the boss is locking us out by increasing our cooldowns, we'll still be okay. And lots of champions with really good passives like Duchess and Syl and Drexthar as well, to make sure we're always getting value every turn, even if we get locked out. Then if you quickly want to see the builds I was going with Duchess, we're looking for speed and resistance and toughness. And then obviously I will show you the masteries really quick if you would like to see those. And then we will head on over to Syl of the Drakes, which is right here. We've got her in a decently sped up relentless set, obviously to get a lot of procs from the passive ability here, where she's going to heal and keep our allies up and give us a consistent source of sustain. And then here is the Masteries on my Silt of the Drakes. I can move myself out of the way here a little bit. I did go with the War Master just to help speed up some of the runs I'm doing when I use her in the Doom Tower in different scenarios. Now, if you may want to build her a lot differently. If you're going to be using her for the arena, you may want to go a little bit more sturdy, but I didn't really have to change around a whole lot of Masteries. This is kind of a general utility setup for Sil. Then for Drexstar, we want him to be pretty tough with a decent amount of speed and enough accuracy to land those HP burns. And we also have a cool passive on him where he's got a chance when hit to place an HP burn, and he can also stack his resistance up a little bit. So if you're building a high resistance factor of him, you would get a little bit by every enemy under HP burn, which is going to help a little bit, not a ton. But by the way, you want to get to about, I'd say getting up to around 350 to 400 accuracy is pretty is going to make you like kind of be the goal for you to get to when you're putting together champions to go up against this final Eternal Dragon. And then for his Masteries, I can pop those up really quick. And I gotta move myself again here. Giant Slayer is actually a pretty solid pickup on him because he has the triple hit A1, so you can get that to proc a bunch of different times. Then for Varask, this is the gear that I went with right here. You just want lots of HP, lots of sustain, lots of speed. Relentless can be okay with on him, and you want to make sure you get a very high crit rate, at least 90%, ideally 100%, so you make sure you get those heals super consistent. So I would definitely try to get the 100% crit rate. I actually have like 93 on mine. Yeah, 93% crit rate. So ideally, I would get that bumped up 7% and get it up to 100 to make it perfectly performing and healing every time, to go ahead and pair up with his Cannibalism passive. That's going to heal all allies by 10% of his max HP when he inflicts a critical hit. That's why you got to get tons of HP and make sure he is ideally crit capped, but at least get to like 90% on his crit rate, so it's happening most of the time. And then the Masteries right here, I will show you just in case you were curious on those. And of course, I got to move myself again, but there we go, are the Masteries that I'm currently going with on Varask. Then for Padma, similar story. It's actually pretty similar to Varask, except we want a lot of defense and just a decent amount of HP. And we also have to make sure she has enough accuracy to land her stuff. Ideally, you're going to want to get to that 350 to 400 range. My stuff was a little bit low, but it was good enough to work. So you can see a lot of my champions were like in that 335 to 350 range for accuracy. Ideally, I would min-max, get my crit rate up on my Varask, get a little bit more accuracy on my stuff, but the Eternal Dragon isn't something that I really farm. It's more about just getting it done. So if I'm able to do 4-minute runs on the Eternal Dragon, I'm totally happy with that. But on Padma, we're looking for enough accuracy to land because the A1 is a super consistent opportunity for us to go ahead and keep that decreased attack up permanently, which is amazing on this boss because it's always doing all of those AoE attacks. But we do have to get a critical hit on Padma, so we're going to have to get that crit rate up. And you can see that I built my crit rate up to 93%. It seems to be the number that I really love. So if I were going to build like a team where I'm going to grind the Eternal Dragon every day, I would definitely bump up the crit rate of Padma and Varask up to 100%, but when they're 90 plus, it's good enough to take the boss down. But then for the Masteries on Padma, right here is kind of the standard and normal route to go with on a normal Padma setup. So let's go ahead and fire up a run, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. I sped this up. I put this on 2x speed, so it's going to be a 4.5 minute run in just over 2 minutes. So a lot of times on these bosses, the waves are not that bad. The Annies right there can hit super hard, so you got to be a little bit careful. And then this wave, there's really nothing too crazy to talk about here, but any sort of decreased attack, Padma's great for that. Can ensure that you're not going to be getting hit too hard. But yeah, so the waves are typically way easier than the boss, and then you'll get to see the rotation of how everything kind of goes on the boss here. So you got the decreased attack coming out right out the gate from Padma. Very handy. The HP burns from Drexstar. And then Varask, Duchess, and Sil are just there to kind of keep everything alive. Padma helps me keep everything alive with the decreased attack. That is super consistent. Doesn't even matter if she gets locked out. Her A1 will continue to provide that. And then Varask just doing the heals. You can set it up as a functioning team and just lock out Varask's A2. That way you're guaranteed to always be getting the heals on his A1, but he should be doing it most of the time anyway, unless you build him as a super high resistance. He'll keep getting his cooldown of his little lightning ability increased. They really should buff his lightning ability a little bit, because most people just want to build him to spam the A1. It should like give him an extra turn or something. It's not like it does anything too crazy anyway. And you can see constantly doing that lockout. So that's why it's really handy to put together a team that gets a lot of value out of their A1s and their passive abilities, so their stuff isn't constantly locked out. Now there are variations you can go with, like we talked about, where you can go high resistance. If you go that route, you're probably going to want to get to like 400 resistance. The more the better. 400, 450, 500. Just anything over 400 is going to be just that much more consistent. But at least you'd probably want to get to 400 resistance if you're going to be trying to count on putting together a resistance team versus this guy, because he lays all sorts of stuff on us, and those increased cooldowns can get brutal if you've got a resistance team that doesn't have high enough resistance to do it consistently. Those increased cooldowns are going to ravage you. And there we go. We can see it's going to be a pretty decent run. It's the last boss of the Doom Tower here in 4.5 minutes. And you can see Drexthar is basically the only source of damage. He was over 4 million damage. Everybody else is just kind of there to make sure we can sustain, keep the Drexthar up long enough to go ahead and finish the fight. And then if you want to see kind of the stats, general breakdown, and kind of get an idea of what you're going to want to kind of be going for in terms of the stats required, you can see here, you want to get most of your champions at least to like 40-something K toughness on your defense champions, like Drexthar and Padma. They're going to be prioritizing defense, and Syl the Drakes does a lot as well. She typically wants a lot of defense. Vrask is a much more HP heavy champion. You want to get that as high as possible while also getting him a decent amount of speed to go along with it. Duchess, you can see with the tons of resistance there at 616. Now that is plenty against this boss. If you're up at 616, you're going to be very reliable to go ahead and resist stuff. Like I said, you're probably going to want to get to like 400 something on a high resistance team. But the nice thing about a team like this is they're built off of a lot of sustain and a lot of value from defaults and passives. So I don't really need to go resistance on everybody. It's okay if they're doing their A1s. I'll still be able to take the boss down. But it's actually a good opportunity for us to talk about this. This is a feature on Farbstoff's RSL Helper tool, where you can go ahead and calculate your odds of landing debuffs or resisting debuffs. Now, we know that this boss is going to have 330 resistance. So you saw most of my champions were around like 340 something accuracy. So if you're at 345, you will be 95% to land that stuff. That's why I said you want to get to like 330 something, 340. The closer you can get up there to 350, 360 is going to just make you that much more consistent. But you can only get to a maximum of 97%. You can see even at 1,000 accuracy, we are 97%. Now, if you match the boss, if you're at 330, you will be at a 92% still. So what if you only get to 300? You'll be at 70%. So you can see here, you want to at least get like up to where I was, 330, 340, 350. But if you can't, you're still going to be decently reliable if you can at least get to like 300. But the runs will just take that much longer. But on the flip side of that, the numbers get a little bit crazier because the boss has 350 accuracy, and the way the system works, it kind of scales towards favoring accuracy. So we're going to need to beat that accuracy number by a lot to get consistent with our resistance. So my Duchess had like 600 something resistance. If we put like 615 here for resistance, now you can see my Duchess is super sturdy. She's already basically maxed out, getting close to that 97%. But what if you can only get to 300 resistance? You're only going to be resisting about 30-point-something% of the time, 3.22% of the time. And that's with 300 resistance. So you can see here, I was telling you to get to at least like 400, because then you're at about a 60% of resisting those effects. And then it just keeps kind of scaling up from there. 450, you're at about 89%. And if you can get all the way up to 500, that's going to be about where you start getting diminishing returns, and you're already at about a 95% chance of resisting those effects. So you're going to want to get at least to 400, but the more you can get all the way up to like 500 is going to be good. And if you can get about a 500 resistance on those high resistance teams, that would be about that perfect sweet spot, because anything after that is going to be heavy diminishing returns, because you're only going to get a couple more percent by going above 500. So that is my Eternal Dragon final boss team, and the thought process and the build and everything that kind of goes into it. Would love to hear your experience as well. And if you have any input, any questions, anything like that, drop it down below. Would love to hear your opinions as well. And good luck in this iteration of the Doom Tower. I hope you're able to get a decent amount of progress and scoop up as many rewards as you can. So that'll do it for me on this one. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.